What would you do if you uncovered a deadly technical flaw at your own family's wedding?
I'm really Morgan.
32, lead propulsion systems engineer at Titan Motors, one of America's biggest car makers. I'm not the drama type. I don't crave the spotlight, but sometimes the stage drags you on whether you like it or not. 3 weeks ago, I stood in the middle of a lavish wedding bash in Scottsdale, Arizona. Champagne flowed, music swirled. The bride's dress was straight out of a movie, and everyone played their part in a velvet-wrapped dream. But I wasn't there to dream. I was there for a promise to my mom and a naive hope that after 10 years, I could return as an adult, as family. But the second I stepped into that mansion, I knew I was still just mom's other kid, the grease monkey engineer from Bakersfield. Then I found it, a $600 million electric vehicle system design, fatally flawed, at risk of exploding under normal conditions. Worse, they knew, and they hid it. Right in the middle of the wedding, as everyone toasted to love and partnerships, I faced a choice: stay silent to protect my shaky bond with mom and the family, or speak up and torch the wedding along with the biggest business deal in my stepdad's company history. I knew opening my mouth would make me the traitor. Just the mechanic, they'd called me. But this time, the car fixer was the only one with the know-how and guts to stop a catastrophe. What would you pick in my shoes? Silence for peace? Or speaking out and risking it all? This isn't just about tech. It's about courage, the limits of loyalty, and what a person's really worth when no one wants to listen. And it all started with an invitation embossed with Riley Morgan is cordially invited to the wedding of her half-brother, Evan Whitmore. I grew up in Bakersfield, California, where summer scorched like a furnace and folks know each other by the auto shop, not LinkedIn profiles. My dad, Walt Morgan, was the best mechanic around. No college degree, no social media, but he could hear an engine and pinpoint the exact part gone wrong. At 6, I'd perch on a wooden stool in his garage. Learning engines sounds like kids learn the alphabet. By 12, I could diagnose issues just from a weird noise at startup. At 14, I tore down and rebuilt an automatic transmission in 2 summer afternoons. Not to impress anyone, I just loved the precision. Every bolt, every piece had a purpose. We weren't rich. 2-bedroom house, no AC, sometimes choosing between motor oil or the electric bill. But I never felt deprived until Mom left. I was 3 when she walked out, saying she needed to find herself. My childhood brought a few birthday cards, always weeks late. Dad never badmouthed her in front of me. He just worked harder, smiled less, and made sure I had tools to chase my passion for machines. Then tragedy hit when I was 16. One July afternoon, Dad collapsed in the shop swapping spark plugs on a '98 Ford. His heart stopped before the ambulance arrived. I lost not just a father, but my teacher, my only anchor in a world already unfair. While my friends obsessed over prom or SATs, I stood in court, fighting to legally run Dad's garage to keep it alive and pay for high school. Nights working, mornings studying, afternoons fixing cars. My life had no room for sparkly American dream nonsense. Until Mom showed up out of nowhere, not with a late birthday card, but with a wild offer. Sell Dad's garage, move into her and her new stepdad's Scottsdale mansion, and let them handle my future. Sounds tempting? Wait till you hear who they are. I rolled into Scottsdale on a Friday morning under Arizona's blistering sun and the lingering scent of pricey perfume in the air. The Uber pulled up to the Whitmore Estates gate, a massive iron thing with a polished brass plaque, radiating a cold power I never belonged to. The driver whistled. Dang, people really live like this? I gave a half smile. Yeah, they do, and stepped out with my beat-up duffel bag. Not Samsonite. Not Italian leather, just a worn canvas bag with a frayed zipper, like my place in this family, packed along, but nobody's keeping it long. Before I could knock, a butler in a crisp suit appeared, like he was programmed. Miss Morgan, this way, please.
No smile. No welcome.
The first person I saw inside was Victoria, Evan and Bianca's mom, the Whitmore family's unofficial queen. She was pointing at a $1,000 imported vase, demanding new flowers to match the hardwood's tone. When our eyes met, she nodded like confirming a delivery. Riley, so you arrived. Her words carried zero warmth. Not a greeting, definitely not an invitation. More like, the busted printer showed up. Nice to see you too, Victoria. I forced a smile. Gerald will show you to your room. She turned away, done. Conversation over, like an email marked read, no reply. Gerald, The butler led me through a hallway long as a five-star hotel's, past living rooms each with its own wine cabinet. Finally, he stopped at a small door near the end of the east wing. The blue room. My room, if you can call it that, was smaller than their coat closet. Single bed. One window overlooking a side lawn. No flowers, no welcome card. Just a sheet with the event schedule and a clear message. You're invited, but you're not one of us. I sighed. My dad used to say, you don't need an invite to walk in, just bring your worth. But standing in that chilly room, I wasn't sure my worth was enough to survive 3 days in a place where everything, from the food, the glances, to every toast, was measured by bloodlines and bank accounts. And this was just day one. At 7 p.m., I walked into the mansion's grand dining room. The ceiling was so high, the clink of spoons on plates echoed. Under French chandeliers, everyone was seated like a PowerPoint slide, polished, efficient, and emotionless. I was placed at the far end, not the main table, a side table. So far away, I had to guess what they were laughing about. Next to me sat a distant cousin and some guy from Orion Motors, the company prepping to merge with Whitmore Automotive. The only one at my table who knew my name was me. Just as I debated asking for salt, the door swung open and Evan, my half-brother, strode in. Tailored suit, future CO smile. Everyone stood, shaking hands, greeting him like a late-arriving star at a Milan fashion show. Then he did something unexpected. He spotted me and waved from across the room. Riley, glad you made it. A tiny moment, but to me, it almost felt human. Before I could respond, Victoria stood. Her voice sliced the air like a razor. Evan, darling, tell everyone about the Westlake projections. Robert was so impressed by your growth forecast. And just like that, all eyes turned to numbers, stocks, mergers, market share. Family dinner, my ass, it was a shareholder meeting. I sat quietly, picking at my salad, until I heard Yoan Drive, the upcoming electric vehicle platform. They said the design was finalized, ready for mass production. I looked up. Is the battery cooling system dual circuit? Or still cascade loop? The table went silent. Richard, my stepfather, stopped mid-sentence, staring like I'd asked about Martian stock prices. Where'd you hear that? He asked, face icy. Industry talk, I replied, calm. I work in EVs, you know. Victoria let out a laugh, the kind from someone used to owning the room. Oh, Riley, darling. These are complex corporate matters. Maybe stick to what you know best, fixing cars. I locked eyes with her, smiling.
Great.
Then maybe I should fix the logic loop in your cooling system before it melts your whole fleet. No one laughed.
But I know they heard me.
My mom sat silent, face flushed with embarrassment. Richard changed the topic fast. I sat there, chewing cold steak like it was the last wall between me and the rage boiling in my chest. Not because they dismissed me, because they were wrong. And they knew I was right. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because the room was cold or because Victoria had set the heater to social frostbite mode, but because of the look in Richard's eyes when I brought up the cooling system issue. It wasn't surprise, it was the look of someone who'd been caught. The next morning, I decided to find the wedding schedule in the study, something my mom said was in a stack of documents near the printer. The family office was upstairs, mahogany paneled walls, walnut desk, everything radiating that old school control vibe. I didn't intend to snoop. Just grab my folder and leave. But as my hand touched the folder labeled Riley Morgan, something fell off. A laptop was slightly open. Beside it, a stack of papers marked confidential, Yoan Drive specs, and something that made me freeze, a technical schematic of the cooling battery system. You have to understand, I'm an engineer, and engineers have a flaw. When we see a schematic, we read. 30 seconds in, I saw the disaster. Their cascade cooling system had no failsafe. If a car fast-charged then drove at high speed, say, a Texas highway in summer, the battery's temperature would spike into thermal runaway, uncontrolled fire, potentially fatal in minutes. I flipped more pages. They knew. Handwritten notes read, known issue, redesign deferred to Q3. Proceeding with current specs for merger timeline. Meaning they intentionally delayed fixes to meet a $600 million merger deadline. They prioritized profit over human lives. My hands shaking, I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of every page. This wasn't family business anymore. This was professional ethics. This was federal law. I was about to close the file when I noticed a sea blue envelope labeled Merger Correspondence. Inside were emails between Richard and Victoria. One line made my blood run cold. Claire must go through with the wedding. Her father's land is part of the contract. Evan needs to secure it by Sunday. I couldn't believe my eyes. My brother, Evan, was marrying as part of a land clause in a merger deal. Love, maybe, but also a strategic endgame. That's when I heard footsteps. I quickly tucked everything back, pretending to read the wedding itinerary, heart pounding like I was hiding explosives. The door opened. Richard walked in. "Morgan," he said, suspicion dripping from his voice. "What are you doing here?" I looked up and held up the printed schedule. "Just grabbing my stuff. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your business." He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave the spot I'd just stood in. But it was too late. I knew. That night, I sat alone in the small room at the hall's end. The wedding schedule printout lay on my lap, but I couldn't read a single line. My mind spun with questions, none with easy answers. What should I do with what I know? I had proof of a dangerous design, a flaw that could make car batteries ignite after a fast charge. I had internal emails showing they knew the risks, but ignored them to rush the Orion Motors merger. Worst of all, I knew if this blew up now, at Evan's wedding, everything would collapse like dominoes. My family would fracture again. My mom, who'd spent her life leaning on Richard's wealth, would lose the only stability she had. Evan would be hurt, maybe lose Claire, his fiancée, who I wasn't sure he truly loved or was just part of a real estate deal. And me, I'd likely lose the last fragile tie to the only family I had left. But if I stayed silent, Orion would sign the deal. Yoan Drive would hit production. Tens of thousands of electric vehicles would roll out with a faulty cooling system, a ticking time bomb strapped to every driver's life. Crashes, fires, even deaths, and I'd know it from the start. I'm an engineer. I took an ethics oath at graduation. Public safety comes first. No clause says, ignore it for family. So I did the only thing I could. I grabbed paper and pen, sketching a concise analysis, a rough draft of a new cooling system I knew could replace the current one. Not perfect, but safe. I rehearsed my pitch a few times, like prepping for a technical review. Short, logical, no emotion. I knew I had to confront Richard directly. I'd give him a chance to fix it before I took this public. I didn't want to be the traitor, but I couldn't let this go on. Tomorrow was the rehearsal dinner, then the wedding itself. I had less than 24 hours to convince them to stop before it all spiraled out of control. The rehearsal dinner was held in the backyard of the estate. Beneath strings of golden lights hung from old oak branches. Everything was perfect. Soft jazz music, fresh flowers, food served on silver trays. A night Victoria had probably dreamed of long before Evan even knew how to tie a tie. I wore a navy blue dress, not flashy, but serious enough. I wasn't there to draw attention. I was there to talk. And only one person mattered, Richard. I waited. I watched. He was chatting with a partner from Orion, smiling the kind of smile people wear when stock prices are about to soar. Finally, when he stepped into a corner of the garden to take a call, I made my move. "Richard," I said, voice low and steady. "We need to talk. About the Yoan Drive." He turned, his eyes guarded. "This isn't the place to discuss that." I found a critical flaw in the cooling system design. Thermal runaway could happen after just a fast charge and acceleration sequence. This isn't an internal matter anymore. I held out the sketch and photos I'd taken the night before. His eyes locked on the numbers, but his hands clenched tight. "You weren't authorized to access these documents." "I know, but I can't stay silent knowing people could die just so you can push this deal through." Before he could respond, Victoria appeared, like a power radar had alerted her to a leak. "Richard, Evan's looking for you to finalize the wedding schedule." Then she turned to me, smiling with lips but not eyes. "Riley, you should be at your table with the guests. This isn't your place to interrupt the grown-ups." Grown-ups. You're pushing a faulty EV system into the market. This isn't about family anymore. This is public safety. Her voice dropped, razor sharp. "If you ruin this, I'll make sure Detroit Motors knows exactly what kind of employee you are. You won't work anywhere again." Richard cut in. "Morgan, if you keep going, you're attacking your own family." I laughed, not because I found it funny, but because it hurt. I'm not attacking family. I'm saving lives. And if that feels threatening to you, maybe you need to ask yourselves who you really are in this story. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there. eyes wide, mouth shut, for the first time realizing just the mechanic had become their biggest threat. I left the garden with my heart pounding like a war drum. Not from fear, but adrenaline. For the first time in years, I didn't swallow it. I didn't grit my teeth and let it slide. I stood up, and they were scared of that. I'd barely reached the hallway when Evan stepped out from the main house, face confused, eyes scanning for someone. When he saw me, he strode over fast. "Riley, what just happened?" "Victoria said you." "What? That I ruined the party? Or that I spilled the truth about the faulty tech about to hit thousands of cars on the road?" Evan froze.
No comeback.
And that's what chilled me to the bone. "I knew about the flaw," he said quietly, "months ago." I was stunned. I sent an internal memo, but they said they'd fix it after the merger. Told me not to make a fuss. I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "And you went along with it? You let it slide?" Evan looked down. "Riley, I didn't know what to do. I was caught between Dad and Victoria. The wedding, the land deal with Claire's family. That's real? Your marriage, it's a condition for their land." Evan didn't answer. His silence spoke louder than words. "Do you love her, Evan?" I asked, no judgment, just a human question. "I do," he said, voice thick. "But sometimes, I don't know if they're letting me love her for real." Before I could respond, my mom appeared behind us, worry etched on her face. "Morgan, what are you doing?" Her voice trembled. "Victoria just told me you've made a mess." "I just saved them from $1 billion scandal," I said, keeping my tone steady.
Morgan, not now.
"This is Evan's wedding. Don't embarrass the family." I looked at her, the woman who'd held me sobbing when Dad died, now trembling at the thought of losing her financial lifeline. "Mom," I said slowly, "when I stood alone in that freezing garage at 16, where were you?" She went silent for a long, long time. Then, softly, "I'm sorry. I made the wrong choice. I thought it was best for you." I gave a bitter smile. "It's fine. I'm used to surviving without anyone choosing right for me." I turned to leave, but before I stepped inside, I heard Evan's voice. "Riley, thank you, sis."
Sis.
The first time he'd ever called me that. The first time anyone in this house truly had my back. The next morning, I woke up early. The Arizona sun was still blazing, but the air felt different. No one said anything, but the entire estate seemed to be holding its breath. News had spread fast. There was no official statement, but enough whispers that every pair of eyes followed me. The engineer girl, the one who stood up in the middle of a wedding party and slammed the brakes on a $600 million deal. And then the media came in. By late afternoon, the headlines exploded across major outlets. Orion, Whitmore merger paused over product safety concerns. Insider whistleblower warns of Yuan Drive, thermal runaway risk. Unnamed engineer says no during CEO's family wedding. I wasn't unnamed for long. Everyone figured it out. And suddenly, my phone was on fire. Reporters.
Colleagues.
My manager at Detroit Motors asked for an urgent one-on-one.
Victoria?
Silent. No more sharp remarks. No more disdainful looks. Just silence, the kind that happens when power slips from your hands like a wine glass onto a marble floor. Richard? Vanished. Word was he'd been locked in emergency legal meetings all day. Evan sent me a simple text. "Thanks for doing what I couldn't." That night, my mother came to my room, carrying a cup of hot tea. The first time she had initiated something like that since I came home. "Morgan," she began, "I know you didn't mean to ruin everything." I looked at her. I didn't ruin it. I fixed it, like Dad used to. She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I know, and I'm proud. I was scared." I held her hand. "Me too, Mom. But silence is scarier." Right then, my phone buzzed. An email from Howard Ellison, CEO of Orion Motors. Subject line, request for technical debrief, Yuan Drive cooling. The message was short. "We'd like to hear from you directly. Urgently. Can you be at Phoenix HQ tomorrow morning?" For the first time, I wasn't Mom's stepchild. I wasn't just the mechanic. I was the person the entire industry was listening to. But I knew the fight wasn't over. There was still a system to fix, a company unraveling, and one bigger question. What will I do with this new power? I walked into Orion Motors Phoenix headquarters the next morning, armed with my laptop, a stack of blueprints, and a resolve no one could buy. Howard Ellison, the CEO, greeted me himself. Polite, but no pleasantries. The kind of guy used to running boardrooms, not living rooms. "We need to know what you've seen," he said bluntly the moment the meeting room door closed. I laid it all out. Every spec, every tolerance failure. I pointed to where temperatures spiked, where current wasn't evenly dispersed, where the battery fire risk was real, not lab theory. A senior engineer in the room blurted, "Damn, she's right. We could lose the whole fleet weeks after rollout in Texas or Nevada." Howard crossed his arms, eyes drilling into me. "So, can it be fixed?" I took a deep breath.
Yes.
But it needs a full redesign of the primary cooling circuit. Add a secondary cooling system and an emergency heat alert. We can meet the launch if we start now. An hour later, I was brought on as technical lead consultant for the emergency project. No formal contract, no job switch, just one mission. Fix it before it's too late. The next 3 weeks were technical hell. I coordinated Orion's new engineering team while facing quiet pushback from some Whitmore old-timers who still saw me as the bastard kid stirring trouble. But I didn't care. I had a whiteboard, a drafting pen, and most importantly, a voice. Evan joined the team, voluntarily. "You lead, I'll follow," he said. For the first time, we worked as allies. Claire, Evan's new wife, sent coffee for the crew every Sunday morning. "I don't get the blueprints," she laughed, "but I know good people when I see them." My mom even stopped by the lab once, bringing my childhood favorite apple pie. "Like Dad's," I said. "More like you," she replied. "Because you carry on the best thing he had, decency with duty." By week 4, the new cooling system was done. Fail-safes, dual active fans, instant heat alerts. We aced simulations in every harsh condition. A week later, Orion held a press conference. The media dubbed it Yoan Drive, version 2.0, designed with integrity.
Me?
I didn't take the stage. I sat in the tech row, where I belong. / 3 weeks after the newly revised EON system was announced, I got a dinner invitation from Evan and Claire. For the first time, not at the estate. No live music. No white-gloved waiters. Just a quiet meal in their newly rented apartment a few blocks from downtown Scottsdale. "We're moving out of the estate," Evan said mid-dinner. "Living with Victoria too long. You forget who you are." I smirked. "I'm glad you remembered." Claire gently squeezed his hand. "Evan needs to be independent. We need to be independent." I looked at them and didn't see a couple molded to fit a legacy anymore. I saw 2 people who had chosen each other. A few days later, my mother showed up in Detroit, unannounced.
No gold jewelry.
No mention of Victoria. Just a small suitcase and a sentence that stopped me cold. I don't want to live in a world where my daughter needs permission to be herself. We walked around Belle Isle, sat on a wooden bench as the sunset poured gold and orange over the lake, like something out of an indie film. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother not performing. "Morgan," she whispered, "you once asked me why I left. I don't have excuses. Only truth. I was afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid of being poor. Afraid of being left behind. But I've realized the scariest thing was losing you." I didn't cry. I just held her hand. Forgiveness needs a beginning. This was ours. And Richard and Victoria? Richard tried to reconnect. An overly long email, something about, "Maybe we should talk like adults." I haven't replied. Some relationships' silence is the only maturity left.
Victoria?
Still Victoria. The last time I saw her, she was walking out of a shareholder meeting, face like stone, eyes refusing to meet mine. And honestly, I no longer needed her to look at me. Because after everything, I didn't need their approval to know who I am. I am Riley Morgan, not the stepchild, not the mechanic. I am a lead engineer, the woman who helped pull a $600 million deal back from disaster. And more importantly, the one who didn't stay silent when everyone else did. 1 year later, I was honored at the National EV Technology Conference. Evan,
Claire.
And my mother sat front row, cheering like I was the only person in the room. For the first time, I stepped onto that stage, not just for the engineering, but for myself, / The hall was packed that night. White lights bounced off the electric vehicle models displayed in the exhibit, gleaming like tech jewels. The National Electric Propulsion Conference, where America's top mechanical engineering minds converged. My name rang out among hundreds of veteran engineers, renowned inventors, and industry CEOs. This year's Technology Innovation Award goes to lead engineer Riley Morgan, who went from just the mechanic to an icon of 21st century engineering ethics. I stepped onto the stage. Navy suit, tailored just right. Not to blend in, but to stand there as me, no disguise needed. In the crowd, I saw Mom stand and clap. Evan let out an unrestrained whistle. Claire glowed brighter than the stage lights. They sat together, my family. I took the mic, looked out at the audience, and said, I was once called just the mechanic. They used it to put me down, to remind me of my place in their world. I paused, breathing steady. But you know what? That label taught me something. An engineer isn't just an inventor, but a fixer. And sometimes fixing a car is easy, but fixing a system, a culture, or a family, that takes more than knowledge. It takes courage. The room went quiet, not from lack of feeling, but because it hit home. We live in a world that prizes speed. But sometimes, the slowest one, the one at the back, the one overlooked, sees the flaws clearest. I closed with the words my dad repeated every time I tore into a machine. Always fix it right. Not fast. Not flashy. Just right. The hall erupted. And amid the applause, I felt something strange. I didn't need to prove myself anymore. I belonged here, not because they said so, but because I'd carved my own path with my own hands. As I stepped off, Howard Ellison, Orion CEO, shook my hand. Our long-term consultant offer still stands, he said. But now, I think you should pick any role you want. I just smiled. I'll think about it after I change the oil on my '67 Mustang back home. // after the ceremony, with everyone gone, I stood alone in the empty hall. The trophy was heavy in my hands, but far lighter than the journey it took to get here. Evan came up, slinging an arm around me. You know, sis, if Victoria hadn't called you just the mechanic that day, none of this might have happened. I laughed. Not sure if I should thank her. You don't need to. You don't need anyone's validation anymore, he said. You're the one who made us all rethink. Ethics, engineering, courage. He was right. And if you're watching this, maybe you've been called something similar. Just an assistant, just a junior staffer, just the girl behind the computer. I'm here to tell you, just doesn't mean less. Just doesn't mean you're small. Doesn't mean you're not enough. Doesn't mean you can't change things. I was underestimated for my roots, for the clothes I wore,
For the work my dad did.
but that's what made me tough, sharp, uncompromising. And one day, you'll see, the one they overlooked is the only one who knows how to stop a disaster. So, if you've ever been dismissed, smirked at, pushed out of the room, remember my story. And remember this, you don't need an invite to the table if you're the one holding the key to the exit. Thanks for watching to the end. If this hit you, give it a like, hit subscribe to keep me fueled for more powerful stories. And if you've ever been the underdog and proved them dead wrong, share your story in the comments. I'll read every one. And don't forget, sometimes, the mechanic is the one who saves the world. //